Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. I'm really glad you found your way here tonight. Maybe today felt long, or maybe your mind is still carrying quiet echoes of unfinished thoughts. Or maybe you simply enjoy falling asleep to gentle ideas rather than silence. Either way, this moment is already enough. You've arrived somewhere that asks nothing of you. Tonight, imagine that you've wandered into a forest just as the day is letting go. Not in a vivid or effortful way. There's no need to picture every tree or leaf. The forest exists whether you focus on it or not. It has always been here, waiting patiently, long before this moment, and long before any worry you might be carrying. You don't have to do anything to enter it. You're already here. You may notice, without trying, that your breathing begins to soften. Not because you're controlling it, but because the body often knows how to settle when it senses safety. Some people feel their shoulders growing heavier, as if gravity has become a little kinder. Thoughts might still be present, but they can drift now, like leaves resting on slow-moving water, carried gently without direction. Forests are ancient places. They've watched centuries pass without comment. Storms, quiet mornings, long nights, all of it held calmly beneath layers of branches and sky. And tonight, instead of learning facts in the usual sense, we're simply walking through observations. These aren't lessons to remember or details to hold on to. They're small, soothing companions for rest, offered softly and without expectation. As you listen, it's completely fine if your attention wanders. You don't need to follow every word. You don't need to stay awake. Some people drift in and out of listening, catching a phrase here and there. Others fall asleep halfway through a sentence. All of that is welcome here. The forest doesn't mind. The voice will continue at the same calm pace, steady and unchanging, whether you're listening closely or not at all. If it feels comfortable, you might allow your screen to dim or rest face down nearby. You don't have to make a decision about it, just a quiet invitation, nothing more. This time is yours, and it can unfold however it wants to. We'll be spending this night among trees, soil, air, and slow moving time. We'll notice how forests grow, rest, change, and remain. Each thought will arrive gently and then pass on, making room for the next, like footsteps on a soft forest path that never needs to be remembered. Now, as the light fades a little more, you might sense the air cooling. The forest deepens, becoming quieter without becoming empty. Ahead, the first trees stand calmly, their presence steady and familiar. And as we step forward together, the first quiet observation waits about how long forests have been here and how patiently they hold the world. Some forests were already old when humans were still learning to speak, long before cities, roads, or even stories passed from mouth to mouth. Forests were already here, shaping the land slowly and patiently. Tree by tree, season by season, they grew into living archives of time. Many forests have existed in some form for millions of years, adapting gently as climates shifted and continents changed. When you stand among trees, you're surrounded by a kind of memory that doesn't rush or fade. The rings inside a tree are like years stacked carefully together, each one added without urgency. Forest time moves differently, unconcerned with minutes or deadlines. It stretches calmly across centuries, reminding us that life does not need to hurry to endure. And within that vast patience, growth begins almost invisibly. Most growth happens too slowly to be seen. A tree can change without ever seeming to move. Day by day, there is no dramatic difference, no sudden leap upward. Instead, growth unfolds quietly, like a slow breath taken over many years. Leaves open, roots extend, trunks widen, each action so subtle it escapes notice. This slowness is not weakness. It is strength built carefully, layer by layer. Trees do not rush toward the sky. They arrive there gradually. Their pace allows them to adjust, to settle into their surroundings rather than resist them. In this way, forests teach that lasting change doesn't announce itself. It accumulates gently and often in company with others. No tree truly grows alone. Beneath the forest floor, a quiet world of connection spreads outward in every direction. Roots intertwine, fungi form vast networks, and tiny organisms move nutrients and signals through the soil. What looks like a collection of individual trees is, in reality, a community. Resources are shared. Warnings travel silently underground. Support passes from one life to another without ceremony. This togetherness doesn't require coordination or awareness. It simply happens, as naturally as breathing. The forest thrives not because each part stands apart, but because everything is woven together. And this quiet cooperation continues just below the surface, where the forest floor waits. The forest floor is always busy, yet it feels completely still. Fallen leaves settle into soft layers, creating a gentle blanket that muffles sound and movement. Beneath that calm surface, decay and renewal unfold side by side. Leaves break down slowly, feeding the soil. Small creatures move carefully through hidden spaces. Nothing is wasted. What falls is not lost. It is transformed. Stillness here does not mean inactivity. It means work done patiently, without display. Rest and renewal share the same space, reminding us that slowing down can be part of creation. And from this quiet work, richness gathers below. Forest soil is rich with life, even though it often goes unnoticed. Dark and fertile, it holds countless organisms, bacteria, fungi, insects, each playing a role in supporting the forest above. This soil is more than dirt. It is a living foundation. Nutrients cycle through it slowly, carried from decaying matter back into new growth. The strength of towering trees begins here, in darkness and humility. Life thrives where we rarely look, sustained by systems that don't seek attention. The forest stands tall because its support system remains hidden, steady, and patient. And within that soil, roots extend, anchoring everything gently in place. Roots anchor more than trees. They stabilize soil, guide water, and hold entire ecosystems together. Spreading outward and downward, roots form a quiet network that prevents erosion and softens the movement of rain. They are gentle anchors, unseen but essential. What holds a forest steady rarely rises above the surface. Strength doesn't need to be visible to be real. In the same way, roots offer grounding without effort, holding life in balance through simple presence. As water moves through this anchored land, the forest begins to shape its own calm environment, one of moisture, shade, and steady rhythm. Step into a forest, and the air often feels different. Without walls or ceilings, the forest creates a space that feels sheltered, like a room made entirely of leaves. Trees shape the movement of wind, slow it down, and guide it softly between trunks and branches. Sunlight filters instead of striking directly, and shade gathers naturally. Within these boundaries, temperatures tend to feel calmer, cooler during the day, gentler at night. Forests quietly shape the space around them, not through force, but through presence. They offer comfort without effort, shelter without enclosure. The forest becomes its own small world, where the environment adjusts itself patiently, creating conditions that feel steady and forgiving. And within this gentle climate, the air itself begins to change. The air in a forest can feel softer on the skin. Trees release water vapor through their leaves, adding moisture that lingers gently among the branches. Mist may drift between trunks in the early morning or after rain, and breath can feel fuller in the cool shade. This moisture doesn't overwhelm, it cushions. Air here feels less empty, more held, as if it carries weight without heaviness. Humidity settles quietly, easing sharp edges from heat and dryness. The forest breathes out water slowly, returning it to the atmosphere in a steady rhythm. And as this moisture gathers and rises, it begins a larger conversation with the sky above. Rain doesn't simply fall, it's guided. Forests and water move together in long, patient cycles. Moisture, released by leaves, rises into the air, contributing to clouds that may later return as rain. When rain does arrive, the forest receives it gently. Leaves break its fall, branches redirect its path, and soil absorbs it carefully. Instead of rushing away, water lingers, soaking in leaf by leaf. This cooperation between sky and land slows everything down. Rain becomes less about impact and more about arrival. And as water settles into the forest, it begins to gather itself into quieter forms. Some rivers begin as whispers. Many streams and springs find their calm beginnings among trees, where water is protected from harsh sun and fast erosion. Thin ribbons of water wind through moss and stone, guided gently downhill. Forests keep these early streams cool and steady, allowing them to grow without urgency. What starts small persists through patience, not force. These waters move softly, learning their paths over time. As they flow, they carry with them a kind of quiet presence, and where water moves slowly, sound begins to take shape. Forests rarely fall silent, but they rarely shout. Sound here arrives softly, layered, and low. Leaves shift, insects hum, distant birds call, and wind moves through the branches, all without demanding attention. There is no single sound to focus on, only a gentle blend that ebbs and flows. It's a natural lullaby, without a clear beginning or end. These sounds don't interrupt, they accompany. They exist in the background, allowing the mind to loosen its grip. And just as forests create sound gently, they also know how to receive it. Leaves don't reflect sound, they welcome it. Trees soften harsh noise, breaking echoes and absorbing sharp disturbances. Sound sinks into layers of bark, leaf, and soil, losing its edge as it travels. Footsteps become quieter. Voices fade more quickly. Even wind feels muted. This quiet is not emptiness. It is care. The forest holds sound the way it holds light and water, without resistance. And in this softened space, life feels safe enough to move quietly, especially as night begins to arrive. When humans sleep, forests often awaken. As daylight fades, quiet night creatures begin to move. Their activity is gentle, soft steps in shadow, wings brushing air, eyes catching faint moonlight before disappearing again. This is not a noisy awakening, but a subtle shift. Life continues without disturbance, guided by darkness rather than light. The forest becomes a place of listening, where movement happens carefully and presence is felt more than seen. And within this nighttime world, remaining unnoticed becomes a kind of wisdom. In forests, being unseen is often safest. Many animals survive by blending into the background, leaving no trace of their passing. Footsteps are light, breaths are shallow. Bodies learn to move with the rhythm of leaves and wind. Quiet is a skill here, practiced without thought. Attention draws risk, while stillness offers protection. This gentleness allows life to exist without constant conflict. And from this instinct to remain unnoticed, the forest perfects the art of blending. Some creatures disappear by standing still. Camouflage is woven into forest life, from bark-colored insects to leaves shaped like leaves themselves. Patterns dissolve into surroundings until boundaries blur. The forest teaches blending, not standing out. Belonging here means matching the world rather than contrasting it. This quiet harmony allows rest even while awake. And as creatures blend into their environment, the forest itself continues its slow transformations. The forest never rushes a season. Change arrives gently, almost imperceptibly. Colors fade, return, and shift like slow breaths taken across months. There is no sudden switch from green to gold, no sharp command to begin or end. Instead, transitions overlap, allowing lifetime to adjust. Seasons are not deadlines, they are gradual invitations. This acceptance of cycles offers a sense of ease, and as autumn settles in, the forest begins preparing for rest. Letting go can be an act of care. Falling leaves protect the ground below, forming a soft quilt that insulates soil and roots from cold. What appears to be loss is actually preparation. Leaves release themselves not in failure, but in service. They cushion the earth, retain moisture, and create shelter for small life. Even falling has purpose here, and beneath this blanket of leaves, the forest grows quieter still. Stillness does not mean absence. Winter forests are resting, not empty. Beneath snow and frozen ground, life slows but does not stop. Roots remain alive. Seeds wait. Microbes continue their quiet work. The forest sleeps deeply, conserving energy, trusting the cycle to turn again. This rest is not an ending, but a pause, a reminder that slowing down is part of survival. And beneath this winter calm, renewal is already waiting. Spring doesn't announce itself, it whispers. Before green appears above the ground, life has already begun below. Roots stir gently in the soil, responding to subtle changes in temperature and light that most of us never notice. The forest does not rush this awakening. It unfolds slowly, with no clear starting point, as if waking from a long, restful sleep. Buds swell almost invisibly. Sap begins to move. Renewal happens without urgency or spectacle. Nothing asks for attention. The forest simply continues, trusting the season to arrive in its own time. And within this quiet beginning, tiny structures hold entire futures. A whole season can fit inside something small. Tree buds are compact spaces, carefully wrapped and protected, holding leaves, flowers, or branches long before they are revealed. They are tiny sleeping rooms, each containing a complete design for what will come next. Buds wait patiently through cold and wind, asking only for the right moment to open. There is no hurry. Potential rests peacefully, knowing when to emerge. In this way, the forest reminds us that growth doesn't need constant motion. Sometimes it waits, complete and ready, until the time is right. And when buds finally open, they do so briefly and beautifully. Some beauty doesn't linger. Many forest flowers bloom for short windows, appearing quietly and fading just as gently. Their colors feel like quiet smiles, soft, brief, and never demanding to be seen. The forest values timing over permanence. These flowers do not compete for attention or stay longer than necessary. They exist fully in their moment, then step aside. Presence here does not require attachment. What matters is not how long something lasts, but how naturally it belongs. And in these brief moments of bloom, small helpers arrive to carry the work forward. Small lives quietly support large systems. Insects move through the forest on invisible errands, pollinating flowers, breaking down material, and feeding countless other forms of life. Their wing beats are soft, their paths unnoticed, yet their roles are essential. The forest moves through tiny helpers, each one contributing without recognition. There is no spotlight, no reward, just participation. Importance here is measured by presence, not attention. And as insects come and go, balance begins to shift and adjust around them. Balance is not still, it's fluid. Forest populations rise and fall like a slow tide, responding to changes without panic. When one presence increases, another may gently recede. Nothing aims for perfection or permanence. The forest is always listening, adjusting itself through countless small changes rather than dramatic swings. This constant recalibration happens quietly, without stress. Adaptation becomes a natural state, not a reaction. And through this flexibility, forests develop a deep resilience. Recovery doesn't rush. When forests experience disturbance, they respond gradually, allowing green to return like a calm breath after a pause. There is no urgency to replace what was lost. Instead, healing unfolds step by step, guided by patience. The forest remembers how to grow, even after change. This resilience is not about resistance, but about trust in cycles that have worked for ages. And as recovery blends into renewal, the forest prepares for the next transformation, where even endings become beginnings. Nothing in the forest is truly wasted. When a tree falls, it does not signal an ending, but a shift in purpose. A fallen trunk becomes a resting place, slowly supporting insects, fungi, and new plants. Wood softens, bark loosens, life gathers where stillness settles. Endings here soften into beginnings without ceremony. The forest accepts what falls and uses it gently, allowing decay to serve creation. And as fallen trees become homes, a quieter network beneath the soil continues its work. The forest speaks softly underground. Beneath the surface, fungi spread vast mycelium networks, thin threads of connection that reach far beyond what roots alone can touch. These networks move quietly through soil, linking trees and plants in subtle ways. There are no signals meant to be heard, only exchanges meant to support. Connections stretch farther than roots, forming invisible companionship across the forest floor. And through these threads, resources begin to move. Support often comes unseen. Nutrients travel through forest networks without awareness or intention, passing gently from one plant to another. A tree in sunlight may indirectly support one in shade. A fallen leaf may feed growth years later. The forest gives quietly, without expectation. Mutual care emerges naturally, woven into the structure of the land. Nothing claims ownership, nothing keeps score. And through this sharing, older presences create space for new ones. Age offers shelter. Older trees often stabilize conditions for younger ones, offering shade, protection from wind, and steadier soil. Their presence creates calmer spaces where saplings can grow without stress. This guidance does not instruct or correct. It simply exists. Wisdom stands quietly nearby, expressed through steadiness rather than advice. And as these mature trees shape the environment, light begins to move differently above. Sunlight learns patience in forests. Leaves diffuse brightness into soft patterns that drift slowly across the ground. Light falls like gentle rain, never overwhelming, always filtered. It moves with the day, creating shifting mosaics of brightness and calm. This softened illumination allows many forms of life to thrive without exposure. And where light is moderated, shade becomes just as important. Not everything grows toward the light. Many forest species rely on low light and cool spaces, finding comfort in shade rather than brilliance. Shade becomes a quiet shelter, a place to rest, recover, and exist without pressure. Calm dimness supports growth that does not seek attention. In the forest, shadow is not absence, it is balance. And within this gentle contrast of light and dark, the rhythm slows, preparing the way for deeper rest. You may notice that everything feels a little quieter now, as if you've come to a natural pause along the path and decided to sit for a moment on a soft, moss-covered log. Evening light filters lower through the trees, growing dimmer without ever going dark. A barely noticeable breeze passes by, not asking for attention, just reminding the leaves to move gently. There is no need to follow every word from here. Some people find their thoughts drifting in and out, like clouds passing slowly overhead. You're not moving through the forest anymore. It's holding you, steady and calm, exactly where you are. Some plants measure time differently. Moss grows without hurry, spreading so slowly it can take years to notice any change at all. It thrives in shaded, peaceful places where nothing demands speed. Layer by layer, it settles over stone and soil like green velvet laid down with care. Moss does not compete or climb. It rests where it is, content to grow outward rather than upward. This patience is not weakness. It is success defined quietly. Moss reminds the forest that thriving doesn't require visibility, and as it spreads gently, it begins to shape the way water moves and stays. Water rests where moss grows. Each soft patch holds moisture like a sponge, cradling rain long after it has fallen. Moss stabilizes forest floors, slowing runoff and keeping the ground cool and damp. It holds without gripping, releasing water gradually back into the soil and air. This gentle balance protects its roots and supports countless small lives. Moisture lingers here, never rushing away. And in these calm, shaded spaces, other ancient plants find their home. Ferns remember a different world. Long before flowering plants appeared, ferns were already unfurling their fronds beneath open skies. Their curled beginnings resemble quiet memories slowly unfolding, repeating a pattern refined over millions of years. Ferns do not shout their age. They simply continue, linking past and present through form and rhythm. Each frond carries ancient time forward, growing new life from old designs. And as these living reminders spread through the forest, they stand among layers of history held quietly in place. The forest keeps a quiet record. Soil layers, growth patterns, and fallen wood preserve traces of what came before. Time leaves gentle marks rather than bold signatures. A deeper layer of soil tells of older climates. A scar in bark hints at a long past storm. These pages are written in earth and wood, never meant to be read all at once. Memory here does not speak, it rests. And among these records, trees themselves carry time in visible form. Every year leaves a line. Tree rings form slowly, one after another, reflecting seasons of abundance and hardship alike. Each ring is a calm breath taken over a year's time, added quietly to the whole. Growth records itself without effort or intention. Wide rings, narrow rings, all equally accepted. Time becomes visible, but never rushed. And through these rings, some trees continue standing long after many lifetimes have passed. Some trees have watched centuries come and go. They have stood through changing climates, shifting landscapes, and countless quiet mornings. Their trunks are steady witnesses, holding time without strain. Long lives grow slowly, supported by patience rather than urgency. These trees do not chase permanence. They simply persist. And as they stand, enduring without effort, They prepare the forest for movement once more when wind begins to pass gently through their branches. Wind learns to slow down among trees. As it enters the forest, it meets trunks, branches, and layers of leaves that gently interrupt its path. Sharp gusts soften, speed dissolves into movement. The air begins to weave instead of rush, slipping carefully between living forms. Even moving air becomes calmer here, guided without command. This soft resistance creates peace, not by stopping the wind, but by reshaping it. The forest teaches motion how to be gentle, and as the wind slows, it begins to speak through the smallest details. Each leaf listens to the wind. Rather than moving as one, leaves respond individually, creating thousands of small motions layered together. A single breeze becomes a quiet conversation, translated into ripples of green. Movement passes through the canopy like waves across water, never chaotic, never still. This motion doesn't demand attention, it soothes it. The forest shows how many small responses can coexist without disorder. And as leaves move, they carry sound with them, easing the forest into night. Night rearranges the forest's voice. As daylight fades, familiar sounds soften and retreat. The rustle of daytime activity gives way to deeper, steadier tones. Different sounds step forward after sunset, not louder, just clearer in the quiet. The forest doesn't fall silent, it changes key. These shifts happen without disruption, like light dimming at dusk. The soundscape becomes simpler, more rhythmic. And within this nighttime arrangement, tiny musicians begin to lead. Night keeps time softly. Crickets and other insects create repeating patterns that rise and fall like breathing. Their rhythms don't measure hours, they mark presence. Some rhythms don't need clocks. They exist to soothe rather than signal. These sounds repeat without urgency, offering consistency in the dark. The forest hums gently, guiding attention away from thought and toward rest. And as these rhythms settle in, the sky begins to appear through small openings above. The sky peeks through slowly. Forest canopies reveal stars in fragments, framed by leaves and branches. Instead of a wide expanse, the night sky arrives in pieces, small, quiet lanterns scattered overhead. This partial view softens wonder, keeping it from overwhelming. Beauty here is measured, offered gently. The forest allows the sky to be present without dominating. And among these scattered stars, moonlight begins to wander. Moonlight doesn't fall straight here. Leaves break it apart, scattering silver patterns across bark and ground. Light drifts instead of shines, moving slowly as branches sway. Shadows stretch and dissolve, never fixed. This gentle illumination feels exploratory, as if light itself is curious. It wanders, touches, and moves on. And as moonlight settles into softer forms, the forest grows still again, ready for rest. Paths appear where patience passes. Forest trails are shaped slowly, formed by repeated movement over long stretches of time. Soft earth remembers footsteps, pressing gently under weight until a root emerges. No plan is needed. Habit carves direction without pressure. These paths don't demand speed, They invite familiarity. They are records of presence rather than intention. And as trails form, they reveal something older, our long connection to these places. Forests welcomed us early. Long before permanent shelters, humans found safety among trees. Campfires once glowed softly between trunks, offering warmth without ownership. The forest provided resources and refuge, not as a possession, but as a place to belong temporarily. This belonging never required dominance. It asked only respect and attention. And even now, that quiet invitation remains. Within forests, movement naturally slows. The forest sets its own tempo. Uneven ground, roots, and fallen branches encourage careful steps. Speed fades among roots, replaced by awareness. You move not to arrive, but to continue. This slowness is not an obstacle, it's guidance. The forest gently adjusts pace without instruction. And as movement slows, attention begins to shift. Nothing demands your focus here. In forests, awareness broadens instead of narrowing. Eyes rest rather than search. Sounds arrive without urgency. Attention softens, spreading evenly instead of locking onto details. This restful perception allows the mind to loosen its grip. There is nothing to solve, nothing to monitor closely, and as attention relaxes, time itself begins to feel different. Time loosens its grip among trees. Natural rhythms replace clocks. Minutes stretch like shadows, lengthening without effort. Moments widen, becoming less defined. Without schedules or signals, time feels spacious rather than scarce. This freedom from measurement allows presence without pressure. And within this expanded sense of time, stillness takes on a new role. Stillness works quietly. In forests, pauses support balance and life cycles just as much as motion does. A held breath before release, stillness creates space for adjustment and renewal. Rest has purpose here. It is active in its own way, sustaining what movement alone cannot. And as stillness settles in, it prepares the mind and the forest for deeper rest. You may already feel how rest has begun on its own. As if you're lying quietly beneath the trees now, looking up without searching for anything in particular. The forest is fully at night, wrapped in a stable, gentle darkness that doesn't press or demand. The ground feels steady beneath you, offering support without effort. Awareness can come and go here. You don't need to follow each sound or sentence. Listening and dreaming begin to overlap naturally, like shadows blending together. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be held. Darkness here is gentle, not empty. Even in the deepest parts of night, forests are never completely without light. Faint glimmers filter through leaves, arriving from stars, moon, or distant sky. Darkness holds these traces softly, allowing shapes to remain kind rather than sharp. Shadows feel protective instead of uncertain. Night still carries light, just enough to remind the forest where it is. This quiet illumination creates a sense of safety within shadow. And sometimes, the light does not come from above at all. Not all light comes from the sky. Some forest life glows softly at night. Certain fungi and insects emit faint natural light, like tiny stars resting close to the ground. Their glow is subtle, never bright enough to disturb the dark. It feels like a secret meant to be stumbled upon, not announced. This quiet wonder does not ask for attention. It exists simply because it can. And in these dim conditions, many creatures move confidently without needing to see. Seeing is only one way of knowing. Many forest creatures navigate the night using sound, scent, and memory rather than sight. Invisible maps are carried inside their bodies, guiding them through familiar spaces. The forest teaches other senses to speak clearly when light fades. Trust replaces vision. Movement becomes intuitive rather than planned. And as creatures move by scent and sound, the forest itself begins to breathe differently. The forest breathes differently after rain. Scents shift with moisture and temperature, changing hour by hour. Earthy notes rise from soil and leaf litter, drifting softly through the air. Scent moves like memory, appearing without warning and fading just as quietly. These invisible presences shape experience without ever being seen. And while the surface rests, deeper layers remain active. Even sleep doesn't pause life. Soil continues working through the night, carrying out decomposition and nutrient cycles beneath layers of rest. Microbes and fungi move slowly, breaking down material and returning it to the system. This quiet labor asks for no awareness. Support continues whether noticed or not. The forest is sustained by work that never interrupts rest. And through this steady process, cycles continue without conclusion. The forest doesn't finish. It flows. Growth and decay repeat endlessly, forming circles rather than lines. Endings dissolve into beginnings without ceremony. Nothing arrives at a final point. Continuity becomes a comfort, not a demand. Life moves forward by returning again and again to familiar rhythms. And as these cycles turn quietly, the forest prepares for light's slow return, carrying everything gently toward another dawn. Morning starts quietly. Long before the sun appears, the forest begins to change. Darkness thins almost imperceptibly, like mist slowly lifting without direction. The light does not arrive all at once. It seeps in, gently adjusting the edges of night. Shadows soften. Colors begin to separate from one another. This transition makes no announcement. It happens whether anyone is watching or not. Dawn here is not an event, but a process, unfolding patiently. The forest accepts this change without urgency, allowing night to loosen its hold. And as light continues its subtle return, warmth follows in its own careful way. The forest resists sudden change. Trees, soil, and leaf layers moderate the shift between cold and warmth, easing temperature rather than letting it jump. Cool air lingers, while warmth returns slowly, as if testing the space before settling in. This steadiness creates comfort. Extremes are softened. Mornings unfold gently, allowing life to wake without shock. The forest holds temperature like a memory, releasing it gradually. And as warmth spreads quietly, sound begins to rise in layers. Sound wakes slowly. Birds and insects do not begin all at once. Notes appear one by one, scattered lightly through the air. A single call here, a subtle rustle there. Morning doesn't rush its voice. Instead, it builds a soundscape gently, allowing silence to remain between sounds. This gradual awakening keeps the forest calm. No sound demands attention. Everything arrives in its own time. And among these first notes, birds respond to the light itself. Light speaks softly to birds. Many respond not to the sun directly, but to subtle changes in brightness. Feathers catch the earliest glow, and wings stir gently in response. Timing here is intuitive, guided by gradual cues rather than signals. Birds begin to move because the light suggests it, not because it commands. This natural rhythm feels unforced and precise at the same time, and as wings begin to move, other creatures follow with equal care. The forest wakes without noise. Morning movement is careful and quiet, shaped by damp earth and lingering stillness. Soft steps pass over leaves and soil, leaving little trace behind. Animals begin the day without haste, adjusting to the returning light patiently. There is no scramble, no urgency to begin. Calm defines these first moments. And as movement increases, tiny details become visible on leaves nearby. Morning leaves carry quiet treasures. Dew forms overnight as condensation gathers gently on surfaces. Tiny beads of water catch the growing light, reflecting it softly. Water arrives without falling, appearing as if placed carefully where it's needed. This silent gift refreshes plants and soil alike. Dew does not announce itself. It simply waits to be noticed or not. And in this gentle renewal, the forest continues toward clarity. Morning colors whisper first. Forest light shifts in tone before it strengthens. Early light appears cooler, tinted with blues and silvers that drift gently between trunks. These colors feel calm and distant, easing the forest into day without disruption. Light wakes slowly, never forcing clarity. It brushes surfaces rather than illuminating them fully. This gentleness allows shadows to remain for a while longer, stretching softly across the ground. Shadows wander in the morning. As light angles low, they grow long and fluid, moving like calm water across roots and paths. Darkness loosens its hold gradually, retreating without resistance. These shadows are not heavy, they are transitional, part of the forest's slow release from night. They stretch, thin, and eventually fade, and as they shift, mist often begins to form in the spaces they leave behind. The forest exhales softly. In valleys and low places, cool air allows moisture to hover near the ground. Mist gathers and rests, like white breath held just above the earth. It lingers without purpose, blurring edges and softening distance. This moment exists between sleep and waking, where clarity pauses briefly. The forest does not rush to clear it, and when warmth increases, the mist lifts gently. Light doesn't chase mist, it invites it away. As sunlight grows warmer, mist fades gradually, rising and dissolving without struggle. The air clears patiently, layer by layer. Nothing is forced. Visibility returns through cooperation rather than pressure. This release feels natural, unremarkable, and complete. And as the air opens, shapes emerge more clearly. Seeing returns little by little. Forest clarity comes in stages, allowing the eyes to adjust slowly. Forms separate, depth returns. Details appear without demand. Clarity doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds gently, maintaining calm. This gradual awareness feels supportive rather than stimulating. And as clarity settles, the forest continues its work, regardless of who is watching. The forest doesn't need an audience. Life proceeds quietly, whether observed or not. Growth, decay, movement, and rest all continue beyond attention. Trees do not pause to be seen. Birds do not wait for witnesses. This quiet persistence offers freedom from watching, from measuring, from holding on. The forest exists fully on its own terms, inviting rest simply by continuing. By now, sleep may already be happening. Not suddenly, not completely, just softly, like a slow drift you don't need to notice. The trees stand quietly as guardians, tall and patient, asking nothing at all. The forest breathes on its own, steady and unhurried, carrying the night forward without effort. You don't need to listen closely anymore. You don't need to listen at all. Thoughts can blur and loosen, passing without form. There is a gentle sense of being held, even without awareness of how. Forests prefer gentle endings. They rarely stop all at once. Instead, boundaries soften gradually, thinning into meadows, fields, or open land without a clear line between one place and another. Trees space themselves farther apart, like a sentence trailing off rather than ending sharply. This gradual fading feels natural and kind. Edges here are not borders, but transitions, spaces where one landscape slowly becomes another. The forest shows that endings don't need to be abrupt to be complete, and within these softened edges, light begins to find room to rest. Light finds space gently. Openings appear naturally over time when trees age, or shift. These gaps are not interruptions, but pauses, places where the canopy loosens its hold. Sunlight pools quietly on the ground, warming patches of earth without urgency. These openings feel like breaths taken between long phrases. They allow space without creating absence. The forest doesn't resist these moments. It makes use of them. And in these calm clearings, new life begins to rise. Growth waits for calm openings. In the quiet gaps where light reaches the soil, young plants begin to grow. Small leaves reach upward slowly, testing the space without hurry. These beginnings are unassuming, guided by patience rather than force. Renewal here is gentle, unfolding in its own time. Nothing rushes to fill the space completely. The forest allows room for growth without pressure, and as new life settles in, larger cycles continue, turning quietly in the background. The forest doesn't remember, it continues. Its cycles repeat without awareness of what came before. Growth follows decay. Decay feeds growth. Like waves returning endlessly to shore, these processes carry no weight of history. There is freedom in this repetition. Nothing needs to be corrected or remembered. Each cycle stands on its own, complete in the moment. And within these repeating patterns, scale begins to blur. Small and vast live together here. Tiny organisms work beneath the soil while towering canopies stretch overhead. A world within a world unfolds at every level, all at once. Size loses meaning in the forest. What is small is essential. What is large is supported. Perspective softens, allowing everything to belong without hierarchy. And within this layered existence, time itself begins to loosen. The forest never checks the time. Its rhythms follow cycles, not clocks. Shadows move without schedules. Moments stretch freely, unconcerned with measurement. There is no hurry to arrive anywhere. Time becomes spacious rather than counted. This indifference to timekeeping offers release from urgency, inviting rest without conditions. And as the forest continues at its own pace, the mind can follow, slowing, softening, and drifting easily onward. Nothing in the forest hurries healing. After disturbance, recovery unfolds slowly, without urgency or alarm. Green returns one quiet layer at a time, first small plants, then broader cover, then the steady presence of trees once more. There is no race to replace what was lost. The forest allows space for adjustment, trusting time to do its work. Patience here is not a choice. It is a natural state. Healing does not announce progress. It simply continues, steady and calm. And within this patient return, life adapts without needing a plan. Adaptation doesn't need intention. Forest life changes through gradual adjustment, responding softly to new conditions rather than anticipating them. Like water, finding its way around stone, life shifts gently, reshaping itself without force. There is no blueprint, only response. Each small change settles into place, guided by what works rather than what is expected. This trust in natural flow allows the forest to remain flexible, and through this flexibility, variety begins to offer strength. Strength comes from difference. A forest is woven from many kinds of life, each contributing in its own way. Diversity adds quiet stability, like many threads forming a single cloth. When one presence falters, another can carry the balance. Variety settles the system, preventing fragility. No single form holds everything together. Harmony emerges without sameness, allowing resilience to grow naturally. And within this varied landscape, sharing space becomes effortless. Sharing doesn't require meeting. Many species coexist by using space differently. Some above, some below, some in between. Life overlaps softly, layered rather than crowded. There is room to exist without conflict. Paths cross without collision. This peaceful coexistence feels unremarkable because it works so well, and these layers extend vertically, building the forest upward and downward at once. Life rises in quiet levels. The forest is built in vertical layers: the floor, the understory, the canopy, each hosting its own forms of life. Stories are stacked from ground to sky, each layer supporting the next. Order emerges without command. No one directs this structure. It forms through relationship and time. And through these layered interactions, balance settles naturally. Balance happens when nothing forces it. Stability in forests emerges through countless interactions rather than design. Like a mobile finding its center, the system adjusts itself gently. Stillness finds its place alongside movement. Ease replaces effort. The forest rests in this balance, not because it was planned, but because it was allowed. And within this ease, a broader perspective begins to unfold. Most change passes unseen. Forests shift so slowly that decades or centuries may pass without noticeable difference. Shadows move across years rather than minutes. Time slips quietly, leaving only subtle traces behind. This pace releases the need to watch closely. Nothing important happens suddenly here. Change unfolds, whether noticed or not. And through this slowness, long-term rhythms quietly shape the land. Some rhythms take centuries. Fire, growth, decay, and renewal repeat over long spans, like slow-turning wheels. These cycles shape forests without drama or urgency. The forest remembers through cycles, not events. Continuity replaces surprise. Each phase prepares the way for the next, carrying life forward without interruption. And through these long rhythms, the soil itself becomes enriched. What fades still nourishes. Ash and decay return nutrients to the earth, turning darkness fertile. Broken down material feeds future growth, supporting what has yet to appear. Loss softens into support. Transformation here carries no grief, only function. The forest accepts change as contribution. And from this enriched ground, new beginnings quietly take shape. Beginnings don't announce themselves. Seeds sprout unseen beneath soil and leaf, making small movements in darkness. Life starts quietly, without witness or reward. Growth begins long before it becomes visible. This hidden progress requires trust. Trust that what cannot be seen is still happening. And often, growth waits. Nothing grows before it's ready. Waiting is part of forest life. Seeds rest patiently until conditions align. Light, moisture, warmth arriving together. Stillness prepares the way. Pauses are not delays. They are essential stages. The forest honors timing without pressure. And through this patience, gentleness becomes a lasting strategy. Gentle forces last. Many forest processes rely on subtlety rather than strength. Soft rain shapes stone. Quiet persistence endures. Gentleness becomes a form of power, carrying change forward without resistance. The forest survives not by pushing, but by yielding wisely. And in this softness, the final stretch of quiet understanding settles in, ready to fade into rest. The forest chooses adjustment over struggle. Rather than competing aggressively for space, many plants learn to adapt to what is available. Branches bend instead of colliding. Leaves angle themselves to catch light without stealing it. Growth here is responsive, not forceful. Space is shared quietly, shaped by awareness rather than domination. This ease replaces effort, allowing many lives to exist side by side without constant conflict. And through this gentle adjustment, cooperation begins to last longer than struggle ever could. working together lasts longer. Beneath the surface, roots overlap and intertwine, supporting one another without negotiation. Mutual support systems persist far beyond moments of dominance. Resources move where they're needed. Stability forms through connection rather than control. Support spreads quietly, never announcing itself. The forest holds together because its parts lean toward cooperation, not competition. And through this connected way of being, life learns how to endure. Flexibility is a form of strength. Trees that sway in the wind are less likely to break. Species that bend often endure longer than those that resist every change. Survival here leans rather than pushes back. Yielding becomes wisdom, allowing life to move with conditions instead of against them. This flexibility creates longevity without rigidity. And beneath this adaptability, a deeper strength remains unseen. What holds the forest is mostly unseen. The strongest systems operate out of sight, deep roots anchoring soil, fungal networks distributing support, microscopic life maintaining balance. Quiet strength does the most work. These hidden efforts don't seek recognition, yet everything depends on them. The forest stands tall because its foundation rests in invisibility. And built into this hidden strength is an understanding of rest. Rest is part of the design. Dormancy is essential to renewal. Life pauses like a held breath, conserving energy and preparing for what comes next. Nothing grows without pause. Seasons of rest allow strength to rebuild quietly. This permission to stop is not a failure, but a necessity. And when rest deepens, it spreads beyond individuals. Sleep spreads gently. Many forest species rest at the same time, creating calm, shared cycles. The forest settles together, activity lowering across layers of life. Stillness moves through branches, soil, and air alike. Shared rest creates balance, synchronizing rhythms without instruction. And within this collective quiet, life continues softly, even when unnoticed. Nothing needs watching. Forest rhythms continue without awareness, like a song playing softly in another room. Life processes don't pause for attention or observation. Growth, decay, and movement persist on their own terms. This brings relief from vigilance. Nothing requires monitoring. The forest carries itself forward gently, and within this ease, peace takes on a fuller meaning. Peace can move. In forests, calm includes gentle sound and motion. Leaves shifting softly, branches swaying, insects humming quietly. Stillness breathes here. Silence is not required for peace to exist. Instead, harmony forms through balanced movement. This redefinition allows rest to feel alive rather than empty. And as movement continues peacefully, change is accepted without resistance. Nothing is argued with. Forests accept change as it arrives, without judgment or delay. Seasons turn naturally. Loss and growth pass through without complaint. Change simply arrives, and the forest responds by continuing. This ease with impermanence removes struggle. There is no clinging, no refusal. And within this acceptance, simplicity becomes stability. Simple things last. Forest processes remain uncomplicated, following clear paths like water flowing downhill. Complexity isn't required for balance. Systems stay stable because they do not overreach. This simplicity offers mental uncluttering, a sense of clarity without effort. And through this steady simplicity, continuity brings comfort. Nothing finishes here. Forests have no final moment, no last chapter. Life keeps moving softly, looping rather than ending. A story without a last page continues beyond attention. This continuity offers reassurance. Nothing is truly lost. And within this endless motion, rest remains present. Rest is always available. Somewhere in the forest, something is sleeping. Darkness rests beneath light. Pause exists within motion. Sleep exists within the system itself, not as an exception, but as a constant. This deep reassurance settles quietly, flowing directly into the final moments of rest. There's nothing more you need to do tonight. The forest has been continuing all along, without effort and without attention. Trees stand calmly as witnesses, holding time without holding on to it. Life moves through night and day in gentle cycles, whether observed or not. You don't need to stay with the sound of this voice. You don't need to remember anything that was said. Somewhere, leaves are shifting. Somewhere, roots are resting. Somewhere, growth is already beginning again. And somewhere else, sleep has settled deeply and comfortably. The forest doesn't ask you to follow it. It simply exists, steady and patient, offering its rhythm without condition. There is nothing to hold, nothing to finish, nothing to understand. The world you've been listening to will continue on its own, just as it always has. You can let awareness drift now, loosening its edges. Thoughts don't need to form clearly. They can pass like soft shadows, appearing and fading without meaning. Sleep doesn't need an invitation. It arrives naturally when space is given. The forest knows this rhythm well. It rests when it needs to, wakes when it's time, and never rushes either moment. You can borrow that pace now, letting yourself settle without effort. There's no goodbye here, only permission. Permission to sleep, permission to drift, permission to let the voice fade into the background, becoming part of the quiet itself. The forest will keep going, and you can rest,